Now that Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special counsel, what impact might that have on a possible indictment of former President Trump? In the wake of Trump's declared candidacy for 2024 last week, Garland tapped Jack Smith to take over both the probe into numerous White House records with classified markings found at Mar-a-Lago after Trump left office, and the investigation into the efforts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power following the 2020 presidential election. Smith is registered to vote as an independent, served during the Obama administration as chief of the Justice Department's unit that investigates public corruption. Since 2018, he's been prosecuting war crimes in The Hague stemming from the conflict in Kosovo. So what does it mean for Trump's legal future? Joining me now is Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor, host of the podcast On Topic, and legal affairs columnist for Politico magazine, where his most recent piece is, "This is what's going to happen if candidate Trump gets indicted." Renato, who makes the decision as to whether he does get indicted? Is it Jack Smith now, or is it Merrick Garland?
Well, Jack Smith makes the initial decision, and then Merrick Garland decides whether he agrees with him or not. If he doesn't agree with him, then he has to let Congress know, which is a little different than the typical decision made by the Attorney General. It's more transparent.
Doesn't this remove the nuance of considering the implication of indicting a former president now running for president? In other words, when you sort of contract this out to Jack Smith is looking at it simply, was there a violation of law and can I prove it, not the bigger picture issues.
I think it's fair to say that Jack Smith is less likely to put as much weight on those concerns as Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was a judge for 22 years. I think, somebody who has spent much of his career looking at both sides and very careful and deliberate versus a career prosecutor, right? Somebody who's been focused on making cases. That said, obviously, the former special counsel Robert Mueller, I think very famously gave a lot of deference and showed a lot of restraint towards the former president. So we'll see what Mr. Smith ends up doing.
The Mar-a-Lago case is straightforward, is it not? He had documents, they weren't his, he knew they weren't his, they were requested to be returned and he didn't. That shouldn't take long to wrap up. You agree?
I think that's right compared to the other cases. In other words, I think it's important for viewers to understand that even though the former president has had all sorts of legal troubles over the years and there's been some criminal investigations, I do think the documents case is far more straightforward than any case that the former President Trump has ever faced before, which is a real problem for him. It's much easier to prove. It'll still take some time, I think, because there are some important considerations when you're dealing with classified documents. They need to make sure that the documents that they use in the trial are ones that they feel comfortable with the world finding out the contents of and so on. But I do think it's pretty straightforward.
Is there any reason to await the completion of the investigation into January 6th if they've already wrapped up the investigation and can make a recommendation about the Mar-a-Lago documents?
I wouldn't. I would go ahead and charge the Mar-a-Lago documents and press forward. I mean, there are arguments as to why you might want to wait, but I think the far better move, given the circumstances, is to charge the Mar-a-Lago case. I'm skeptical that the January 6th investigation will result in charges against former President Trump.
And a quick final question: what legal impact would an indictment have on his candidacy, if any?
It would have no legal impact. Whether it has a political impact is up to the people watching this program and millions of others.
Renato Mariotti, thank you. Appreciate it as always.